الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, to proceed. In today's lesson, بإذن ta'ala, we're going to speak about a subject which is very common and we encounter it all the time when we read Arabic texts and when we speak, and that is the subject of what we call حروف العطف. حروف العطف are the letters of al-atf, and al-atf is from the verb عطف. عطف. And عطف, it relates to al-mailu, or to be inclined towards someone, meaning to show them pity, okay, or to show them leniency. That's linguistically. In terms of Arabic grammar, al-atafu, or the huruf al-atfi, they relate to certain huruf which come between two nouns or two verbs or two sentences, and their purpose is to connect the second back to the first, or the one that follows to the one that is followed, right? So, to illustrate therefore, if we have a verb, a fi'lun, and we want to say he travelled, how do we say he travelled, ya Muhammad?
Safara.
Safara. Safara, which means he travelled. But we want to say Muhammad travelled. We say Safara
Muhammadun.
Muhammadun. Safara Muhammadun. Right? So we have fi'lun madin. Mabniyun ala al-fathi. It's mabniyun ala al-fathi. It's fixed upon the fatha. Right? Then we have the fa'ilun marfu'un wa alamatu raf'ihi. The indicator of it being marfu'un is الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. Right? Safara Muhammadun. Now, we want to say Muhammad travelled and Ahmed. So what do we add to Muhammad in order to make it Muhammad and Ahmed travelled?
Muhammadun
wa
Ahmadan.
Ahmadu. Ahmadu. Why Ahmadu and not Ahmadun? Because Ahmad is mamnu' min as-sarfi, so it never becomes Ahmadun. Right?
Okay.
It never becomes Ahmadun. So Safara Muhammadun wa Ahmadu. Now the meaning of that is Muhammad travelled
and Ahmed travelled.
And Ahmed. Muhammad and Ahmed travelled. Now, the purpose of this waw, which is from huruf al-atfi, right? So the first type of huruf al-atfi is the waw. There's a number of them. So, Safra Muhammadun wa Ahmadun, the purpose of the waw is that it is min huruf al-atfi. And its function is to connect Ahmed to Muhammad in two matters. Al-hukmu wal-i'rabu. Meaning, i'rab, the first one. Whatever i'rab Muhammad is, then Ahmed joins it. So what is the i'rab of Muhammadun?
مرفوع.
It's marfu'un. And the indicator for being marfu'un is ad-damma. الظاهرة على آخره. So Ahmed therefore too takes a damma. If that was not a name which was subject to mamnu min as-sarfi, then it would be tanweenu dammin. Right? So that's the first, the i'rab. The second is in relation to its function, the hukm. Muhammadun here is the fa'ilun. So Ahmed is also the one who did the action. Right? So the waw is our first example of huruf al-atf. And there is a particular term that we ascribe to Muhammadun, to the waw, and to Ahmed. The waw we know is harfu atfi. Okay, that's a harfu atfi. Okay. Muhammadun is called al-ma'tufu alayhi. Al-ma'tufu alayhi. Just erase this and write alayhi. Alayhi. Right? So Muhammadun is al-ma'tufu alayhi. Waw is a harfu atfin. Okay? And Ahmadu, the name for this particular ismun, is al-ma'tufu. Al-ma'tufu. Right? So, we have the fi'lun madin, safara. We have Muhammadun, which is the fa'ilun, but it is also what we call al-ma'tufu alayhi. Why is it called al-ma'tufu alayhi? Because it's followed by a harfu atfin, which is followed by another ismun, which is connected back to Muhammadun. Right? And that is called al-ma'tufu. Right. So, in terms of the i'rab, the grammatical analysis, we say that Ahmadu is al-ma'tufu ala marfu'in. We say that Ahmadu is al-ma'tufu, right? The one that is connected back to Muhammadun. But it's connected back to its i'rab, to its grammatical state. So what is the grammatical state of Muhammadun? Marfu'un. So we say that this is al-ma'tufu ala marfu'in. Right? It's connected back to that being marfu'un. Therefore Ahmadu too is marfu'un. Right? فهمت يا محمد؟
نعم.
So that is in the marfu'un state. If we wanted to represent our al-ma'tufu alayhi in the mansubun state, because that's the next one, how would we modify our sentence? Right? What if we wanted to say, I saw. رأيت محمدا
وأحمدا.
محمدا رأيت محمدا
أحمدا.
أحمدا. Good. أحمدا. Right? So now رأيت. What's the i'rab of رأيت?
مرفوع.
Sorry?
إعراب.
رأيت يا محمد. What's the إعراب of رأيت?
What do you mean by إعراب?
The grammatical state.
Oh, it's مرفوع.
Which bit?
The ta.
The ta is مرفوع
Yeah.
because it's the fa'ilun. But ra'a is?
فعل.
It's a fi'lun. Right? And it's مبني على السكون.
نعم.
Okay. لاتصاله بالتاء المتكلم because it's connected with ta المتكلم which is مرفوع, okay, with a dhammah. Right? So رأيت. So we have the fi'lun and the fa'ilun. محمدا is the مفعول به. وأحمد. What is حرف عطف and أحمد is
معطوف.
right المعطوف على
منصوب.
right على منصوب, remember.
منصوب.
Right, if we're going to pronounce it correctly. So we say أحمد is المعطوف على محمد, which is also المعطوف عليه. Right? Similarly, if we want to place that in the majrurun state, we say marartu. Marartu means I passed. Marartu bi by Muhammadin. Muhammadin wa Ahmad. Ahmad, not D, ya Muhammad.
With the one single kasra, wouldn't it?
Yes, but remember that Ahmadu is mamnu min as-sarfi. In fact, that might complicate at this point. So rather than using Ahmed, we'll use Ubaid. Ubay, and then we say what? Ubay D. Why D? Now we have a normal ismun. There's no need to say Ubaydi. What Ubay? Ya Muhammad ismun. It's not mamnu min as-sarfi. It's al-ma'tuf ala majrurin, therefore it must be
Majrur.
with
Oh, sorry,
Ubaydin.
Yeah.
Right? So we now have marartu, which is a fi'lun and a fa'ilun, as in ra'aytu. We have bi, which is
حرف jar.
harfu jarrin. Then we have Muhammadin, which is the ismu jarin, or it's an ismu which is majrurun because of bi. We have waw, which is al harfu atfin. Then we have al ma'tufu alayhi, or al ma'tufu ala majrurin, because it relates back to Muhammadin. Right? So that is very common. And similarly, if we had other names here, marartu bi Muhammadin wa Ubaydin wa Aliyin wa Aliyin, right? Wa Aliyin. So now I passed by Muhammad and Ubaydin and Aliyin, and all of them are majrurun because.
So is Ali also ma'tufu
ala
majrurin?
Yes, ala majrurin. Right? It's said to be al ma'tufu because of this. Right? Al ma'tufu alayhi. That's the ism that will refer back to the one which is originally al ma'tufu alayhi. Right? So the waw is not particularly complicated. Right? Is that clear? We have all three states. So, after the waw, the next most common حرف عطف is the fa. Right? The fa. So, what is the function of the fa, Ya Muhammad? The fa. To
carry on the sentence.
To carry on the sentence. Right. Well, its function, again, is as a harfu atfin, which is to connect. Right? So what's the difference between them? Well, the first difference is that fa is related to sequence of events, wherein the time period between the actions, right, is very small. So it's considered to be continuous. So if we wanted to say, for example, the aircraft arrived. How do we say the aircraft arrived? What's the word for
حروف?
what? No, Ya Muhammad, it's, well, what's the word for aeroplane?
No idea.
It is a ta'iratu. So we want to say the aircraft arrived. So we say what's arrived? Wasala. Wasalat. Wasalat. Why do we say wasalat?
Because of the object and it's female.
Because, right, our ismun, which is the fa'ilun here, is al-mu'annathu, female. So we have to use the ta'nith connected to our fi'lun. So we say wasalat. But if we want to connect wasalat with a ta'iratu, it becomes, because we can't have two sukoons meeting, takes a fatha. Wasalati ta'iratu. Right? Wasalati ta'iratu. Fa. Kharaja. فخرج المسافرون right, I need to erase this name because the order wouldn't be correct. Right, so what do we have here, Ya Muhammad? وصلت الطائرة, which means
the airplane arrived.
Yeah, you don't need to say it, the aeroplane. The aeroplane arrived.
Then the travelers left.
Right. خرج, exited. Then المسافرون خرج, exited. Right? So here, what do we have in essence? We have a jumlatul fi'liya and we have
jumlatul ismiya. No.
Ya Muhammad, kharaja al-musafiruna.
Oh, two jumlatul fi'liya.
Right, we have a jumlatul fi'liya here and we have a jumlatul fi'liya here. And connecting them is the fa, which is min huruf al-atfi. Right? But what is its function here? Right? وصلت الطائرة. The aeroplane arrived. فخرج المسافرون. And the travelers exited. Right? So what do we have? We have a sequence of events. First the aeroplane arrived. And then the travelers exited. But we have a fa, and what did we say is a function of the fa here, in addition to connecting the two sentences, to indicate a sequence of events without interruption. Meaning the time period in which this occurred and this occurred is very short. Right? So, we say that this sentence is the al-ma'tufu, right? This is
no.
right. It's ma'tufun upon this sentence,
Yeah.
right? So this is a connecting harf between them, right? We have one sentence which is ma'tuf upon the first one, right? So if we wanted to continue and say the women exited, then the men, we say fa
أول أو خرج
فخرج النساء. Right? فخرج.
Is that right though?
Actually, what we're going to say is وأول من خرج. We're going to say وأول من خرج أول من خرج النساء. Okay. Right. وأول من خرج النساء. Right. Why isn't that correct here, Muhammad?
خرج is male, third person male. It should be خرج too.
It should be خرجت.
خرج.
Should be خرجت.
Yeah, sorry, خرجت.
Right?
Yeah.
وأول من خرج النساء. But what we want to say is وأول من خرج النساء
رجل
فالرجال. So where you're going to have here المعطوف على المرفوع, and the مرفوع happens to be female here, then it's allowed to have kharaja as a fi'l, because your doer is both male and female.
So use the male.
Yes, but if you wanted to, there'd be no harm either in saying وأول من خرجت, which is how you understood it, خرجت النساء. Yes, نساء فالرجال.
And that's right as well.
Yes, that's correct too. Right? وصلت الطائرة فخرج المسافرون وأول, and the first who خرجت وأول من خرجت النساء فالرجال. Right? So here is the example of fa being used as a sequence of events. Right?
And does it follow the same rule where it has to be the same?
Yes, فالرجال has to be, or الرجال has to be in the same i'rab as النساء. Why did I write an alif with النساء like that? That should be النساء like that. Okay? أول من خرجت النساء فالرجال. Right? Is that clear?
Inshallah.
It's not particularly complicated. All we have is another example of a fa min حروف العطف, which is connecting الرجال to النساء. Just like we have this sentence being connected back to this one. Now, the other common use of fa, which you have to understand when studying this subject, is to differentiate it when you've got the fa of sababiyya. Remember when we said the fa either means then or so?
Or it could be part of the word.
Yes, yeah. But we're not concerned with it being part of the word. When it means then or so, right? So for example, darasta fa alimta. Darasta, you studied. Fa'alimta, so you learned. Right? The fa here is not the fa of huruf al-atf. The fa here is called the fa al-sababiyya. It's the reason why you learned. So the reason why alimta, you learned, is because darasta.
Okay.
Right? And that's common too. But the more that you read and the more that you practice, the difference between them will become clear, inshallah.
Okay.
Right? So that is the...
But you translated the same though, even though the...
No, darasta, you studied, fa'alimta, so... you studied, so you learnt. Right? What you're wondering is why not translate that as darasta, you studied, fa'alimta, then you learnt, right? Is that what you're wondering? Because you think what?
If when you translate it, does the fa still mean saying then?
So here we translate the fa to mean then, don't we? Because we're talking about the sequence of events. وصلت الطائرة فخرج المسافرون.
Okay.
Right? Then the musafirun exited. Here, because we're connecting learning with studying, we say so you learned. Right? Or darasta fa najahta. Fa najahta. What does najahta mean? Najaha. Fa najahta. That means you succeeded. You're successful, like in an examination. Right? Darasta fa najahta. Clear?
Okay.
So that is the fa.
What does that fall under different ruling or?
The fa here?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a different type of fa.
Okay.
We mentioned it because in order to differentiate between the one which is from huruf al-atf and the one which is called fa al-sababiyya. Right? So the next one which is related to it is Thumma.
Then, right. Then.
So what is the difference between fa and Thumma?
I'm gonna guess it's longer period or not period.
Right, yeah,
While
Muhammad.
after.
It's a longer period of time. Right? So we want to say I wrote the letter, then I sent it. How do we say that? I wrote
كتبت الرسالة
يا محمد
الرسالة
كتبت الرسالة
Thumma.
Thumma.
And sent is.
I sent it.
So how do you say sent?
Arsala is he sent.
Arsala, so it's I sent it would end with a who. No, ha. So it's arsal to.
Thumma arsaltuha. أرسلتها. كتبت الرسالة ثم أرسلتها. Right? So, what do we have? كتبت. فعل and the فاعل upon the same i'rab that we've mentioned. الرسالة is the مفعول به وعلامة نصبه. The indicator for being mansubun is?
Mansubun. The indicator for being maf'ul is mansubun.
The indicator for being mansubun is al-fathatu al-dhahiratu ala akhirihi. The fatha upon the end, ya Muhammad.
Yeah, that is how I said.
Right? Thumma is min حروف العطف. أرسلت. أرسلت is فعل ماض. Okay. مبني على السكون. Right? The two is ضمير مبني على الضمة. Right? And then we have the ha, which is the?
Referring it to.
But what is it grammatically? The ha here.
It's possessive. So.
Yeah, no, yeah, Muhammad. It's the maf'ulun bihi.
All right.
Maf'ulun bihi.
Yeah.
It's the object.
No.
Right? It refers to ar-risalata. Right?
Yeah.
So the thumma min huruf al-atfi. So again we have two sentences. Two al-jumlatul fi'liyatu. This one is al-ma'tufu ala al-ma'tufu alayhi, upon that one. They're connected by the thumma. And the function of a thumma is?
Time period.
Yeah, to indicate a sequence, but this time there is
Time period. Does it like differentiate how long could it be, like a week?
right. It's not defined.
It's not defined.
Right. It represents a longer period of time. How long? Well, then that's left to the discretion of the reader.
Okay.
Or in this case, the one who did it. Right? Another example of it is the youth. The youth entered the university, then graduated.
Sahabu? No.
دخل.
Oh yeah.
دخل, the youth. الفتى. ثم تخرج. 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 Right? تخرج means he graduated. So دخل is فعل ماضي مبني على الفتح. الفتى is the ismun, is an ismun which is the fa'ilun. It's marfu'un. Right? وعلامة رفعه is what?
It's assumed to be.
Is علامة رفعه الضمة. الضمة المقدرة على آخره. It's المقدرة. It's implied or assumed to be there. Okay? It's not there because of a mani', because of an obstacle, and that obstacle happens to be because of the alif maqsura, and the alif maqsura cannot accommodate a dhamma. So thumma is min huruf al-ataf takharraja. He graduated. Clearly here we have an example where thumma refers to a long period of time. From the moment where he entered, he would have been in the first year. He would have studied there for several years before takharraja. Right? He exited. So thumma, again, very common but not particularly complicated. Right? So the last one that we're going to do today is Hata.
I said that a few times in
Hata. Hata is from حروف العطف, but it is only from the حروف العطف providing that it fulfills two conditions. It must fulfill two conditions for it to be from حروف العطف. And it also needs to be differentiated from being min huruf al-jarri, because hatta is also a harfu jar. Right? So let's give an example. A very common example which they mention with hatta. I ate. How do we say I ate?
Akaltu.
Akaltu. Akaltu, I ate. The fish.
Samakatun.
Ya Muhammad, what's the fish going to be?
Samakatu.
If you say as-samakatu, then
Oh, sorry, ta. It's maf'ulun bihi.
it's a maf'ulun bihi. Akaltu as-samaka ta. Akaltu as-samaka ta. I ate the fish. Hatta al-ra'sa. This is apparently a very common example of the usage of hatta. Right? What does hatta mean here? Akaltu as-samakata hatta al-ra'sa.
The last word means full, I'm guessing.
Al-ra'sa means the head.
Until the head. Alright, it means I ate the fish until the head.
Right. Not even the head. Right? Hatta here means even the head. Right? If you understand it to mean to the head, so I ate the fish from one point to the head, then hatta becomes a harfu jar. Right? We'll give an example of that in a moment. But akaltu as-samakata hatta ra'sa, hatta here is min huruf al-atfi. As-samakata is maf'ulun bihi mansubun wa alamati nasbihi al-fatha al-dhahira على آخره. حتى is حروف العطف. الرأس is المعطوف على المنصوب. Okay, so we said there are two rules that render hatta min حروف العطف. The first is that المعطوف, this part, must be an ismun. Right? It must be an ismun. Not a fi'lun, not a harfun, not a damirun. It must be an ismun. Ya Muhammad, ar-ra'sa, is that an ismun?
No.
Yes. The second rule is that al-ra'sa or the al-ma'tufu must be part of as-samakata or al-ma'tufu alayhi. It must be al-ma'tufu must be part of al-ma'tufu alayhi, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Because clearly the head is part of the fish. Right? So that's why al-ra'sa here takes the same i'rab and the same hukm as as-samakata. It's mansubun, so it takes the same i'rab, it takes the same hukm. Al-hukm, why? Because I ate as-samakata, right? I ate the fish. Did I not also eat al-ra'sa, the head?
Yeah.
Yes. Right? So that is the use of hatta. Now, many people become confused because hatta is also a harfu jar. Right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I read. How do you say I read?
Akartu.
Qara'tu. Qara'tu, the book.
Kitabu.
You've done it again, Ya Muhammad.
Kitaban.
Al-kitaba. I read the book. Al-kitaba. Hatta النهاية النهايتي النهايتي قرأت الكتاب حتى النهاية. So what does this now mean, Ya Muhammad?
I read the book until
النهاية. You know the famous book that Al-Hafiz ibn Kathir wrote, Al-Bidayatu wal-Nihaya?
Oh, until the end.
The end. Right. So what now is on, or what is the i'rab of al-nihayati?
It's majrurun.
It's a majrurun. Why is it majrurun?
Because this is a harf jar. Hatta is harf jar.
Because hatta is a harfu jar in here. If we said that hatta here is harfu atfin, then what would we have to do to an-nihaya?
It would have to be mansub.
It would have to be mansubun. Right? And how would it change the meaning?
I read the book, even the ending.
Right. I read the book, even the ending. Or the end. Does that make sense?
No.
Why would you not read the ending anyway if you're going to read a book? So it wouldn't make sense. But if we say that hatta is a harfu jarrin, then it does make sense. Qara'tu fi'lun fa'ilun al-kitabata maf'ulun bihi mansubun hatta harfu jarrin an-nihayati ismu jarrin.
What was the second rule? Sorry, the first one is it has to be an ism.
The first one is that afterwards it has to be an ismun, and the second is that it must be part of al-ma'tufu alayhi. For example, marartu, I passed by, right? Marartu bi qawmin. I passed by biqawmin, a group of people. Right?
No.
Wa, I conveyed the salam. Wa salimtu, on them. عليهم. Right? مررت بقوم وسلمت عليهم. Right? حتى الصبيان. Not حتى Actually, rather than using الصبيان, we'll use حتى الأطفال, because الصبيان are very young children. الأطفال.
Even the children? Is that what it means?
حتى Right. So now, yeah, Muhammad. مررت بقوم.
So I passed by people, a group of people.
وسلمت عليهم.
And conveyed salams upon them.
عليهم, on them.
On them.
حتى.
Even.
Right. So then what if حتى is من حروف العطف, الأطفال means the young children.
Yeah.
So what do we place upon the lam here?
Fatah, one mansubun, one mansubun.
One mansubun.
Yeah.
You mean one fatha?
Yeah.
Right? You're saying one fatha because hatta is min huruf al-atfi here, right?
Yeah.
So if al-atfalu here, right? If al-atfalu here is al-ma'tufu, what is al-ma'tufu alayhi? What is it connected back to?
وَسَلِمْتُ عَلَيْهِمْ. It's connected back to that.
Right, but what specifically is it connected to?
Because of the hatta. Why is it specifically connected to that?
No, which part of wasalimtu alayhim is it connected to?
All of it, innit? All of that part there.
Yes, but al-atfal here is a single ismun. So we are now looking for a single ismun that we say it is connected back to.
Oh, well, there can't be single ismun because that's plural and that's plural as well.
Yeah, but when we say a single ismun, we're not talking mufradun necessarily, are we? We're not talking the number, we're just talking about an ismun. There is an ismun here.
Qawmin.
Yes, but it can't be connected to qawmin, can it? Because if you're going to say it's connected to qawmin, then what you're saying is that marartu bi qawmin, I passed by a group of people, right? And you would have to ignore all of this, and right? Well, let's do that. Let's ignore all of this. Marartu bi qawmin, I passed by a group of people. Hatta al-atfal.
Then it would be li.
Right, then it would be li. Why?
Because if you're referring it back to that,
because we're referring it back to bi qawmin or qawmin, and qawmin is majrurun.
Yeah.
So it says al-ma'tufu ala majrurin, right?
Yeah.
And it fulfills the two conditions of hatta being used as a harfu atfin, right?
Yeah.
After hatta we have an ismun, and the ismun, the al-ma'tufu, is part of al-ma'tufu alayh, right?
No.
Qawm. So what is the meaning therefore? I passed by a group of people, even the children. But we don't want to say that, do we?
Okay.
Because that wouldn't really make sense. Why is that significant that you have to mention even the children? But the sentence that we want is وَسَلِمْتُ عَلَيْهِمْ, and I conveyed the salam upon them. Hatta al-atfal. Now it's significant, isn't it? Because that's a sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ himself did. He used to convey the salam even to the children, which is what we want to say. So therefore now, Ya Muhammad, right? What should be on al-atfal, and which ismun is it that is connected back to?
It's connected back to alayhim.
Right, him.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Him is
Meaning them, yeah.
the people who salimtu, I conveyed the salam to, isn't it?
So it's definitely connected back to them.
Right.
It should be
So him here is
just,
the maf'ulun bihi of salimtu,
so it'd be mansubun.
but biwasitati ala, by means of ala, because ala, it accompanies sallama, right?
Yes.
In fact, I've just realized that shouldn't be salim, that's salamtu. That shouldn't be salimtu, that should be sallama. The verb is sallama. Salimtu, that means I surrendered. Salamtu alayhim. Right, note to that correction there. Salamtu alayhim. Right?
Yeah.
Wasalamtu, so the object now of salamtu is him, but by means of ala, because ala accompanies sallama. Right?
These are ala harf jar.
Yes, it's a harfu jar. So harfu jar makes him
Majroor.
majrurun. That's right, that's jarun wa majrurun.
So it would be majroor and atfali.
Right, ya Muhammad. So atfali becomes majrurun. Why? Because it's al-ma'tufu ala
It's connected to that.
majrurin. It's connected to him. But that's a good example of why, depending upon where you're going to connect the hatta back to, can dramatically alter the meaning of the sentence. Right? So, any questions?
Is are there more?
Yes, Muhammad, there are 9.
9. So it's lakan one.
Lakin, yes.
That's one, yeah.
Which we'll do later on, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah.
So we'll conclude. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.